What happens when you become unreachable? When somehow you reach a state where people, circumstances, and even your own thoughts can no longer truly reach you? It's an intriguing concept, one that Carl Jung explored deeply. If you've ever felt distant, untouchable, or simply beyond the grasp of others, you've probably encountered this sense of separation. But contrary to what most people think, becoming unreachable is not a sign of strength or power. In fact, it's a reflection of a deeper process of self-awareness and transformation. Jung talked about the journey of individuation, a process in which we seek to become our truest, most authentic selves. Over time, this journey leads us to become more whole and more connected with our inner selves. But in the process, we often become somewhat unreachable to those around us. We may no longer be influenced by external pressures, expectations, or superficial judgments. But is this a good thing? Is becoming unreachable a form of strength, or does it come with its own set of challenges? In this video, we'll dive into Jung's perspective on what truly happens when you become unreachable, and why this state can be both a blessing and a burden. Carl Jung's concept of individuation is about the process of becoming who we truly are. This journey involves confronting the unconscious parts of ourselves, integrating them into our conscious life, and ultimately achieving a more authentic existence. However, one of the byproducts of this process is that we may start to feel increasingly distant from the world around us. As we grow in self-awareness, we begin to shed the layers of societal expectations and external validation. We become less concerned with conforming to the needs and desires of others. In this sense, we start to become unreachable. People may no longer be able to influence us as easily, and the opinions of others may lose their power over us. While this may seem liberating, it can also create a sense of isolation. Jung believed that the process of individuation was essential to achieving psychological wholeness. However, the more we embark on this journey, the more we separate ourselves from the external world, at least in terms of influence and expectations. At first, this might feel empowering, like a breakthrough, a moment of clarity in which you finally understand yourself better than anyone else could. But over time, it can lead to a sense of alienation, where you no longer feel at home in the same world that you once did. In fact, as we move through the individuation process, we might even begin to feel that those around us are no longer on the same wavelength. We might find it difficult to relate to people who are still immersed in societal expectations, distractions, or superficial concerns. This distance is not necessarily a bad thing. It's a sign of growth, of becoming more in tune with our true selves. But it's also important to recognize that this newfound clarity and self-awareness can create an emotional gap between us and the people we once felt connected to. Jung often spoke about the balance between the conscious and unconscious aspects of the psyche. As we integrate more of our unconscious into our conscious experience, we begin to see the world and ourselves in a new light. But this awakening, this process of becoming more self-aware, can lead to a kind of estrangement. The more we see and understand, the less we can tolerate the ignorance or superficiality of others. The more we grow, the more we can feel emotionally distant. This is what happens when you become unreachable. It's not that you're deliberately trying to disconnect from others. It's simply a natural byproduct of becoming more in touch with your true self. As your perception of the world deepens, you begin to realize that many of the things that once mattered to you no longer hold the same weight. The opinions, the gossip, the expectations of others become distant echoes. Jung also talked about the role of the shadow, the unconscious, repressed aspects of ourselves that we often deny. As we integrate our shadow, we become more whole and more self-aware. But this process can sometimes leave us feeling disconnected from the world. We see the contradictions, the struggles, and the lies that are prevalent in society. We can no longer unsee what we have learned. This too contributes to our sense of being unreachable, because we no longer fit the mold that society has constructed for us. Becoming unreachable is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it signifies a sense of independence, autonomy, and personal strength. You no longer need validation from others. You no longer feel trapped by societal pressures or the need to conform. This newfound sense of freedom is empowering, but on the other hand, it can lead to loneliness, isolation, and a sense of disconnection from the world around you. Jung understood that individuation was a process of embracing the full spectrum of the self, both light and dark. But this journey could be lonely. As we step into the fullness of our identity, we may find ourselves standing apart from the crowd, looking in but not fully participating. This distance, while often necessary for personal growth, can create a sense of sadness or alienation. One of the key aspects of becoming unreachable is the emotional toll it takes. As we become more self-reliant and self-aware, we might begin to realize that many of our relationships were built on superficial connections or mutual dependencies. The deeper we go into our own process of individuation, the more we come to terms with the fact that not everyone will understand or accept the changes we're going through. This can create emotional strain as we navigate a world that doesn't always see or appreciate our transformation. However, Jung also believed that this process of individuation and becoming unreachable was essential for personal growth. The detachment, the emotional distance, is a necessary step toward realizing our full potential. It allows us to reconnect with ourselves on a deeper level and find fulfillment in our own authenticity, rather than relying on others for validation. The ultimate goal, according to Jung, is not to remain unreachable or isolated forever. Instead, it's about reaching a point where we can embrace both our individuality and our connection to the collective. The journey of individuation allows us to become whole, and in doing so, we may find that we're more able to connect with others on a deeper, more authentic level. But this process requires us to first embrace the solitude and isolation that come with becoming unreachable. In essence, the blessing of becoming unreachable is the gift of self-realization, but the burden is the emotional toll it can take. You must be willing to walk the path of self-discovery, even if it means walking alone for a time. Becoming unreachable isn't necessarily about cutting yourself off from the world. It's about reaching a state of self-awareness where you no longer need the approval or validation of others. It's a necessary step in the journey toward individuation, but it's also a process that comes with its challenges. Comment below if you've ever felt like you were becoming unreachable, or if you've experienced the emotional complexities of self-realization. Like this video if you found Carl Jung's insights helpful, and subscribe for more reflections on personal growth and the journey of self-discovery.